Hi, everybody. The 21st Century Illuminati Agenda. So, how's it going? Well, there was a book written by a man called Jacques Attali in 2006, which basically outlines the elite's agenda. It's called A Brief History of the Future. So, the writer of the book worked as an advisor to former French President François Mitterrand, and in 1980 started the European program Eureka, a major European program on new technologies that invented, among other things, the MP3. In 1991, he was a co-founder of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. He's also at the origin of the higher education reform known as LMD, designed to bring all European degrees in line. He's published over 50 books, selling over 6 million copies worldwide. They include an adoring biography of banker Sigmund Warburg. He's also written a glowing account of Karl Marx, arguing that Marx was a free marketer who favored capitalism as a stepping stone to his communist ideal and predicted globalization as we know it today. So, in his book, A Brief History of the Future, Attali predicts that this century will unfold in 3 distinct phases. Super empire, an era of privatization where corporations rule the day. He writes money will finally rid itself of everything that threatens it, including nation states, which it will progressively dismantle. The market will become the world's only recognized law, a system of power whose structures remain elusive, but whose goal is global. Number 2, hyperconflict. Super empire will implode and there will be a period of worldwide chaos. Starting about the year 2030, Attali foresees devastating wars pitting nations, religious groups, terrorist entities, and free market pirates against one another. Number 3, hyperdemocracy in the year 2060. Exhausted by wars and social upheavals, the world public will welcome with open arms the creation of a democratic world government. It will be a collectivist system with everyone working towards the common good. So there's a few themes in this book. First of all, the first one is sexuality. In the future, people will no longer bond and create families. Well, they've done a really good job at destroying the family, in my opinion. They started at least 50 years ago to destroy the family. When people do not bond, it's been proven that it causes personality disorders, narcissism, and also psychopathy. Why would we want to create narcissists and psychopaths? So that is a very, very dangerous thing for the future. We want people to bond. We do not want them to not bond. It says here the couple will no longer be the principal basis for life and sexuality. People will prefer to choose, in full transparency, polygamous or polyandrous loves. The driving force of this trend is technology that frees youth from parental control. The first was the radio, which allowed the young to dance outside the ballrooms and therefore be free of parental supervision, liberating sexuality, opening them to all kinds of music, from jazz to rock, and thus announcing youth's entry into the world of consumption, of desire, and of rebellion. A media-dominated culture will create an egocentric populace who will be loyal only to themselves. That is pure narcissism. Pure narcissism. People only thinking about themselves, not doing any service to others, not loving others, only concerned with themselves. I remember having a radio in my room and listening to music. And yes, they started with the radio. I'd have to agree with this writer. Lovers failing to mate for life. I know so many people out there that cannot find a mate, and they want one. They want a mate, and they can't find one. The world will be no more than a juxtaposition of solitudes, and love a juxtaposition of masturbations. I'd say we're there already. The elite goal is to remove love from sex so that they can control reproduction. Attali writes that in the 20th century, society sought to evacuate the reproductive role of sexuality by making motherhood artificial using increasingly sophisticated methods, pills, premature labor, in vitro fertilization, and surrogate mothers. How true is that? In the future, society will go even so far as to dissociate reproduction and sexuality. Sexuality will be the kingdom of pleasure, reproduction that of machines. And I've already made a video about that. People should really reconsider having babies right now, because you're going to be just a baby-making machine, and the state's going to take your baby and want to raise it, and you're not going to have any say in it. Future generations will manufacture the human being like a made-to-measure artifact in an artificial uterus, which will allow the brain to develop further with characteristics chosen in advance. The human being will thus have become a commercial object. We're already commercial objects, no doubt about it. Surveillance. Attali paints a picture of a surveillance society that would make the Stasi wince. We are there right now, people. We have got every aspect of our lives is surveilled with the smart meters, all our electrical consumption every time you flick a switch. Every phone call that you make is being monitored, every email, every internet site that you visit. We are being monitored 24 hours a day. So that has already come true. By 2050, these machines will have evolved into what Attali calls self-surveillance machines that will allow everyone to monitor his own compliance with the norms. Even our washing machines will be conspiring against us, while the packaging of food products, clothing, vehicles, and household goods will become communicative. We will live with untrustworthy robots. Domestic robots will become universal in daily life. They too will be constantly connected to high-output grids in nomadic ubiquity. They will function as domestic help, as aids for the handicapped or aged, or as workers and as members of security forces. In particular, they will become the watchers. Now, do you want a domestic robot to care for you when you're sick and old, rather than your loving family? Do you want that? This is what they're saying. Do you want to be cared for a robot in the hospital when you're sick? I don't think so. All our data will be collected by public and private security firms. The main form of surveillance will be portable entertainment devices. Your cell phone! Yes, you betcha. The embryo of this today is the iPhone that sends data to the NSA. The unique nomadic object will be permanently traceable. All the data it contains, including images of everyone's daily life, will be stored and sold to specialist businesses and to public and private police. And Facebook has to come to mind when you read that. By 2050, these machines will have evolved into what Attali calls self-surveillance machines. that will allow everyone to monitor his own compliance with the norms. So you're not going to be able to be different. You're going to have to, go along with the norm. We will monitor our consumption of water, energy, and raw materials. We will even have the opportunity to measure permanently or periodically the parameters of our own body. Electronic bugs worn subcutaneously will ceaselessly register heartbeat, blood pressure, and cholesterol. Microprocessors connected to various organs will watch their functioning as compared to the norms. Living insecure and chaotic lives, we will be dependent on insurance companies for security. These companies will make sure their clients conform to norms to minimize the risks. They will gradually come to dictate planetary norms, what to eat, what to know, how to drive, how to protect oneself, how to consume, how to produce, and these companies will be ruthless. They will penalize smokers, drinkers, the obese, the unemployable, the inadequately protected, the aggressive, the careless, the clumsy, the absent-minded, the spendthrift. Ignorance, exposure to risks, wasting, and vulnerability will be considered diseases. Prisons will be gradually replaced by long-distance surveillance of a person under house arrest. I want to mention something here about insurance companies. Insurance companies are financial institutions. Never forget that. And when you're buying insurance, the likelihood that your claim will be paid is slim to none without a battle, even a court battle. The insurance companies in Canada that insure the doctors against malpractice are so big that they can arrange private hearings in the court behind closed doors. Your court case with regards to your health will never see the light of day. Insurance companies are extremely dangerous, and never ever forget that. Okay, if you can avoid getting insurance, you might want to consider that. In the past, we never had insurance. We depended on our friends and our community to help us when we had a problem like a fire. They all pitched in and helped out. That's what we need to go back to, okay? Get rid of these, whatever there is between you and what you need, like a go-between. We have to get rid of the go-betweens. It's talking here about immigration, and immigration flows will expand and submerge nation states. Great Britain will become a major host country, especially for citizens of Central European countries. The latter will turn in their welcome Ukrainian workers, themselves replaced by Russians, themselves replaced by vast Chinese populations. Not sure what he's getting at there, but basically what we've got going on with immigration is why they've loosened the restrictions on immigration is they basically want to eliminate countries, and that's what it has to do with. And so there's this idea of people being able to go from country to country. It's just one big global country, okay? It says here that, yeah, I've got to actually read the whole thing here. Immigration flows will expand and submerge nation states. Great Britain will become a major host country, especially for the citizens of Central European countries. Resistant countries will learn that a population inflow is the condition of their survival. In a sinister passage, Attali speaks of third world hordes engulfing the West. Even more numerous masses will hurl themselves at the gates of the West. They are already number hundreds of thousands every month. That figure will increase to millions, then tens of millions. The United States will be the most popular destination, and in 20 years, the Hispanic and African American populations will almost constitute a majority in the U.S. Nomadism will also become the norm in the West. More and more people will leave one country for another. There will soon be more than 10 million of them switching countries every year. We're seeing that already. How many Americans are called now expats? Our main incentive will be money, but many will leave because they are disgusted by their homeland. They will no longer want to depend on a country whose tax system, legislation, and even culture they reject, and also to disappear completely. They live another life, to live another life. The world will thus be increasingly filled with people who have become anonymous of their own free will. We're already there. It will be like a carnival where everyone, ultimate freedom, will have chosen a new identity for himself. A new identity for himself. That's totally, again, narcissistic. They're trying to create actual narcissists. Hi, everybody. Part 2, the future of the U.S. Now, according to Attali, the dollar will remain dominant until at least 2025, when foreign backers will start abandoning it, and the credit pyramid based on the value of American housing will collapse. The U.S. will then start disintegrating with violence and chaos ensuing. Attali states it will not be tomorrow's Africa that will one day resemble today's West, but the whole West that could tomorrow evoke today's Africa. The U.S. will then have to redesign its government to regain control. The U.S. could then become a Scandinavian-style social democracy or a dictatorship, and even perhaps one after the other. It would not be the first time such a surprise occurred. The first leader to apply the principles required to emerge from the crisis of the last depression was Mussolini. The second was Hitler. Roosevelt only came third. As chaos and violence engulfs the world, Christianity and Islam will strengthen. The Bible Belt region of the southern U.S. will mobilize and could dominate U.S. politics. The U.S. could then, around 2040, fall prey to a theocratic temptation, explicit or implicit, in the shape of theocratic isolationism, in which democracy would be no more than a shadowy presence. This Christian movement could be used in a war against a mobilized Islam, which would presumably weaken and discredit both religions. An international Christian alliance could well form alliances here and there with secular pirates and traffickers in arms, women, and drugs. This alliance will stand face to face against Islam, and the struggle will be relentless. They will defend Christians in countries where they are a minority, as in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq. Before the end of the century, the U.S. will be disintegrated and under the authority of a collectivist world government. That seems to be the direction it's going, no doubt about that. Now we'll go on to part 2 here, the second part of the article. Okay, the name of the book is A Brief History of the Future, written by Jacques Attali. It is a predictive account of the 21st century in light of the elite agenda. Future wars around 2030, Attali sees hyper-conflict starting, a period of tremendous violence and upheavals, out of which hyper-democracy, a one-world, communitarian government, will emerge around 2060. Well, that's quite a while from now, isn't it? I mean, a lot of us think this is happening right now, and I mean, 2060, that's a long time away. Hyper-conflict will consist of devastating wars, pitting nations, religious groups, terrorist entities, and free market pirates against one another. Future wars will be fought with chemical, biological, bacteriological, electronic, and nanotechnological weapons. Chemical arms will be capable of seeking out and killing leaders without being detected. Pandemics should be ready for unleashing at will. Complex genetic arms may one day be directed specifically against certain ethnic groups. Nanorobots as small as a mote of dust, known as gray jelly, could carry out stealth surveillance missions and attack the cells of enemy bodies. Well, we've already got a lot of this going on. The nanorobots as small as a mote of dust, you're talking about smart dust. As far as the gray jelly goes, it's called gray goo, and there's something called a gray goo scenario or a sarcophagi, and that's where this gray goo takes over the world. Morgellons patients have this gray goo in them. There's no doubt about it. And yes, this gray goo is attacking the cells of our bodies. Right now, it's happening right now. Even cows will be used by military pioneers. Cloned animals could well carry out missions. Living animal bombs. Oh my God, monsters out of a nightmare. These weapons will be widely available. Most of these weapons will be accessible to small nations, to non-states, to corsairs, pirates, mercenaries, masquerades, mafias, terrorists, and every kind of trafficker. In the not-so-distant future, it will be possible to make an E-bomb for $400 from a condenser, a reel of copper wire, and an explosive. Wars will break out worldwide. Some will be fought over resources, such as water wars. Well, check out the website Water War Crimes. It's already been happening for many years now. Other wars of influence are between ethnic groups vying for autonomy. It will lead to a splintering in countries and the emergence of new nations worldwide, likely nations of conflict, including Nigeria, Turkey, Iran, and the Philippines. Even cities will proclaim secession. Ethnic or linguistic minorities will demand independence. This partitioning of territories will go badly. Attali believes many conflicts will be savage. Genocides will then be committed with the crudest of weapons. At least 3 of these massacres against the Armenians, Jews, and Tutsi were perpetrated in the 20th century, and those who do not believe it only have to remember that 1938 no one thought the Shoah would be possible. Western nations could be provoked into big wars, with North Korea believed to be a likely catalyst. Now pointed at Japan, North Korea's missiles will one day target the U.S. and China. The missiles of Pakistan, fallen into the hands of fundamentalists, will threaten first India, then Europe. Those of Hezbollah, in other words Iran, that now target Israel, will one day be pointed from Beirut or Tehran at Cairo, Riyadh, Algiers, Tunis, Casablanca, Istanbul, then at Rome, Madrid, London, and Paris. The legalization of drugs. Attali predicts a future world where the masses drown themselves with amusement to escape their insecure and meaningless lives. They will miss the days when frontiers were closed and lifetime employment was guaranteed. Objects were long-lasting, marriages were sealed and remain sealed, the laws unbreakable. Entertainment will be our main escape. It's already here. Some will cloister themselves in the autism of an assiduous use of nomadic objects. They will narcissistically be obsessed by the self-monitors, like the Japanese otaku, those fanatics of virtual nomadism, of autistic listening to music, and of the self-monitoring of the body. I've already heard of these things. Well, you can self-monitor the calories your input. putting in, and it's sort of a little computer gadget. People are addicted to these gadgets. There's no doubt about it. And that's how they get drawn in and sucked in. In collusion with entertainment, drugs will be legalized to numb us to the growing insanity around us. People are already numbed out by prescription drugs. That's right. Not these street drugs, prescription drugs. This writer is referring to street drugs. Well, they should be referring to prescription drugs. So if they legalize street drugs, it's just to make more money. They are legalizing street drugs, basically. They're just giving them a different name, and that's a fact. They want people addicted to drugs because they make money, okay? So if your child is addicted to drugs, you can thank the government for that. Yeah, you can. You can thank the drug dealers, the bankers, especially HSBC. Chemical, biological, or even electronic drugs distributed by self-repairers will become consumer products in a world without the law of police, whose chief victims will be the infranomads, in other words, the world's poor. Feminism is necessary for socialism. Jacques Attali is a pioneer of microfinance, founding Planet Finance, the third biggest organization of its kind. Microfinance consists of giving loans to poor people and community groups worldwide to start businesses. When asked in an interview with Charlie Rose why 80% of microloans are given to women, Attali describes the phenomenon as a strange thing, but in the book he gives the real reason. Women will defer to state collectivism. Not all women, not me, that's for darn sure. Women, pay close attention to this. He's telling you what he thinks that you're going to do. You're not going to defer to state collectivism. That's wrong to do that. By 2060, Attali sees hyper-democracy, a one-world collectivist government, becoming a reality, and the pioneers of this system are what he calls transhumans. There you go. Transhumans will find pleasure in serving others in their communities. They will usher in an economy of altruism, free availability, mutual giving, public service, and general interest. Women will become transhumans more easily than men. Oh my God. Finding pleasure in giving pleasure is peculiar to motherhood. And they're not going to have any babies left to mother, so they're going to have to mother their men, right? Yeah, exactly. The progressive rise of women in every dimension of the economy and of society, particularly through microfinance, will add enormously to the number of transhumanists. Brain chips. Future man will walk the streets, terrified of his own thoughts. He will be implanted with a brain chip. Well, people are getting afraid of their own thoughts. It's called the thought police. Bionic prostheses directly connected to the brain will help us build bridges between spheres of knowledge, produce mental images, travel, learn, fantasize, and communicate with other minds. Oh my God. This technology already allows a quadriplegic to write 15 words a minute through a simple thought transmission and send them off by email. Telepathy is thus already a reality. We will all reap the benefits of this technology. Yep, right. Tomorrow, these processes will make it possible to come up with new forms of direct communication via the mind and improve the process of apprenticeship and on-screen network creation. The consequences of this development will be suffocating surveillance. Today, the state has access to our Facebook profile. Tomorrow, it will be our every thought. One day, consciousness will be stored digitally, and it will be possible to live in multiple hosts. Thanks to the astounding progress we can expect from the nanosciences, everyone will even hope to transfer his awareness of himself to another body, to acquire his own double, copies of beloved people, dream men and women, hybrids built with peculiar traits, pre-selected to reach precise objectives. Some will even seek to overtake the human species with a life form endowed with a different and superior intelligence. Some will live for thousands of years and will enter a twilight zone between life and death. Then man, at last manufactured like an artifact, will no longer know death. Like all industrial objects, he will no longer be able to die, since he will never have been born. Something really scary occurred to me as I was reading this, and I thought, what this is going to do is, like, let's say somebody gets dumped and they really miss their ex. Well, what if they have a sample of their hair and they just create another you to go on with the relationship after you're gone? Oh my God, this sort of thing could really happen. The insanity of the agenda. The book is littered with other similar descriptions of future man being an industrial object, echoing the communist dream of the Soviet man. At one point in the book, Attali says children will be grown in laboratories like a commercial object. He predicts that before the end of the century, the moon will be colonized, and it is interesting to note the psychological process he describes man experiencing. The end goal of the New World Order. Near the end of the book, Attali tells us the ultimate goal of the New World Order: to destroy humanity. Well, that's exactly what they're doing. Attali says hyperdemocracy will be a one-world government run by the United Nations that will force obligations on each citizen towards the environment and other people. Hyperdemocracy will develop a common good defined by a collective intelligence, which is an intelligence peculiar to itself, which thinks differently from each member of the group, in the same way a computer thinks differently from each processor. We will then progressively erase ourselves with technological advancement. Finally, at the ultimate stage of evolution, we might witness a hyper-intelligence of the living, of which humanity will be but an infinitesimal component. Humanity will then die. The singular history of Homo sapiens sapiens would achieve consummation. Our world or theirs, Attali believes that all opposition to the coming world order will be futile, because it will not propose another system. Most of these new contestants will propose no system of substitution, except for a handful who will propose a return to theocracy. To criticize and expose is not enough. We must strive to create our own world before a crazed cult destroys us forever. Well, I'd have to say that, in my opinion, it's going to happen way, way sooner than this, and most of these things have actually already happened. So, I don't think we should go for this. I don't think that we should have this. I'm against it. I'm more for the idea of a democratic republic. I'm more for a government which is along the lines of the American Constitution. And if there's going to be any global government, that is much preferable to this. Okay? And this, you're going to be expected to basically fall in line with these norms. And who's going to just establish these norms? Not you. You're not going to have any say in it. And if you're not in the norm, you're going to be out. You're going to be cast out of this society. There's no doubt about it. So we don't want this. It's already happening. Most of these things have already happened. So it's a great book, but I think he's off about, you know, quite a few years, 35 years, because it's happening right now. So that's my take on it, folks. I'll leave links below, and thank you so much for watching this video. If you like the video, share it. Subscribe to my channel. You can always unsubscribe later if you don't like the videos. And join me on social networks if you're into that. The links are all on my front channel page.